Welcome to Mythical, the podcast that wanders the dark and fantastical pages of fairy tales and myths. I'm the narrator. This season, I'm reading the fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm. Today's story is The Worn-Out Dancing Shoes. Shout out to Mama84 for correctly guessing this week's story. It is one of my favorite fairy tales, and it closes out Season 1 of Mythical. After this episode, Mythical will be going on a break until Season 2 airs in January, though during the break, I'll be posting at least 2 bonus episodes. So make sure you're following me on Twitter and Instagram so that you know when those will be coming. Next season, we'll be taking a little break from the fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm. The focus of Season 2 will be Italian fairy tales. Some of the stories I will be reading will be the Italian versions of some well-known fairy tales, such as Snow White and Little Red Riding Hood. But there will also be new fairy tales that we haven't heard of yet. But for now, let's continue with the Grimm brothers. And I'll begin The Worn-Out Dancing Shoes, as all good stories should begin, with Once Upon a Time. Once upon a time, there was a king who had 12 daughters, one more beautiful than the other. They slept together in a large room where their beds stood side by side, and in the evening, when they went to sleep, the king shut and locked the door. Okay, so they live in a palace, but they all live in one room, which just from context clues is because the king wants them all together and he wouldn't want to go around and lock 12 doors when one is much more convenient. Why is he locking them in their room at night? That sounds very controlling and untrusting and rather unfatherly-like. However, every morning, their shoes were worn out from dancing, and nobody knew where they had been and how it kept happening. So the king issued a proclamation that whoever could find out where his daughters danced during the night could choose one of them for his wife and be king after his death. But anyone who came and failed to uncover everything after 3 days and nights would lose his life. That is a harsh punishment. Also, maybe they just want to put on their shoes and dance around their room. Who says they're going anywhere? Not long after this proclamation, a prince came and was well received. In the evening, he was conducted to a room adjoining the bedchamber of the king's daughters. His bed was set up there, and he was told to watch and find out where they went dancing. And, just to make sure they couldn't do anything in secret or go out anywhere else, the door of the room that led to his was kept open. However, the prince fell asleep, and when he awoke the next morning, all 12 of them had been to a dance, for their shoes were standing there with holes in the soles. The same thing happened the second and third nights, and his head was cut off. Okay, wow. Beheading, that's intense. And the princesses just don't care that these princes are going to keep coming and they're all going to die. After that, there were many who came to try their luck, but they all left their lives behind them. Yeah, so the princesses don't care, and is news not getting out that all of these princes are being beheaded? And maybe stop coming to the palace to try and figure it out. King, let it go. Now, it so happened that a poor soldier, who had been wounded and could no longer serve in the army, traveled toward the city where the king lived. Along the way, he met an old woman who asked him where he was going. "I really don't know myself," he said, "but I'd certainly like to find out where the king's daughters go dancing and where they wear out their shoes, so I could become king." "Oh, that's not so difficult," said the old woman. "Just don't drink the wine that's brought to you in the evening, and then pretend that you've fallen asleep." She also gave him a little cloak and added, "When you put this cloak on, you'll be invisible, and you'll be able to follow all 12 of them." After receiving such good advice, the soldier now became serious about the entire matter and plucked up his courage to present himself in front of the king as a suitor. He was welcomed just as cordially as the others had been, and was given royal garments to put on. In the evening, at bedtime, he was led to the antechamber, and as he was preparing to go to bed, the oldest daughter brought him a beaker of wine. But he had tied a sponge underneath his chin and let the wine run into it, and didn't drink a single drop. Then he lay down, and after lying there a little while, he began to snore as if in a very deep sleep. This must have been a very small sponge for the princesses not to notice. Or maybe he has a large chin or a beard? When the princesses heard his snoring, they laughed, and the oldest said, "He too could have spared his life." After this, they stood up, opened the closets, chests, and boxes, and took out splendid clothes. They groomed themselves in front of their mirrors and hurried about, eager to attend the dance. But the youngest said, "I don't know. You're all happy. Yet I have a strange feeling. I'm sure that something bad is going to happen to us." "You're a silly goose," said the oldest. "You're always afraid. Have you forgotten how many princes have already tried in vain? I didn't really need to give the soldier a sleeping potion. He'd never have awakened, even without it." When they were all ready, they first took a look at the soldier, but he had shut his eyes tight, and since he neither moved nor stirred, they thought they were definitely safe. So the oldest went to her bed and knocked on it. Immediately it sank into the ground, and a trapdoor opened. The soldier watched them climb down through the opening, one after another, with the oldest in the lead. Since there was no time to lose, he got up, put on his little cloak, and climbed down after the youngest. Halfway down the stairs, he stepped on her dress slightly, causing her to become terrified and cry out, "What's that? Who's holding my dress?" "Don't be so stupid," said the oldest. "You've just caught it on a hook." They went all the way down, and when they were at the bottom, they stood in the middle of a marvelous avenue of trees, whose leaves were all made of silver and glittered and glimmered. "I'd better take a piece of evidence with me," the soldier thought, and broke off a branch, but the tree cracked and made a tremendous sound. Again the youngest cried out, "Something's wrong! Didn't you hear that noise? That never happened before." But the eldest said, "That was just a burst of joy, because soon we'll be setting our princes free from the curse." Then they came to another avenue of trees, where all the leaves were made of gold, and finally to one where all the leaves were made of pure diamond. The soldier broke off branches from each kind, and each time there was a cracking sound that caused the youngest sister to be terrified. But the oldest maintained that they were just bursts of joy. They went on and came to a large lake with 12 boats on it, and in each boat sat a handsome prince. They had been waiting for the 12 princesses, and each one took a princess in his boat, while the soldier went aboard with the youngest princess. Then her prince said, "I don't understand it, but the boat is much heavier today. I'll have to row with all my might to get it moving." "It's probably due to the warm weather," said the youngest. "I feel quite hot too." On the other side of the lake stood a beautiful, brightly lit palace, and sounds of merry music with drums and trumpets could be heard from it. They rowed over there, entered the palace, and each prince danced with his princess. The soldier danced invisibly as well, and whenever a princess went to drink a beaker of wine, he would drain it dry before it could reach her lips. That's really funny. I feel like I would be that kind of invisible ghost, just because you could get away with it, so why not have a little bit of fun? The youngest sister was terribly anxious about this too, but the oldest continued to quiet her down. They danced until 3 in the morning, when all the shoes were worn through and they had to stop. The princes rowed them back across the lake, and this time the soldier sat in the boat with the oldest sister. The princesses took leave of their princes on the bank and promised to return the following night. When they reached the stairs, the soldier ran ahead of them and got into bed, and by the time the 12 princesses came tripping slowly and wearily up the stairs, he was again snoring so loudly that they said, "Well, we're certainly safe from him." Then they took off their beautiful clothes, put them away, placed the worn-out shoes under their beds, and lay down to sleep. The next morning the soldier decided not to say anything, but rather to follow and observe their strange life for the next 2 nights. Everything happened just as it had on the first night. They danced each time until their shoes were worn out. However, the third time he took a beaker with him for evidence. When the time came for him to give his answer, he took along the 3 branches and beaker, and went before the king. The 12 princesses stood behind the door and listened to what he would say. When the king asked, "Where have my daughters spent the night wearing out their shoes?" he answered, "With 12 princes in an underground palace." Then he told him everything and produced the evidence. Immediately thereafter, the king summoned his daughters and asked them whether the soldier had told the truth. When they saw that they had been exposed, and that denying would not help, they had to confess everything. Finally, the king asked the soldier which princess he would like for his wife. "I'm no longer so young," he answered, "so I'll take the oldest." The wedding was held that same day. And here the oldest princess had thought that she'd sent this other guy to his death, and now she's marrying him. It's kind of an awkward conversation to have. "So you wanted me dead? Yeah, let's just forget about that happy honeymoon, honey." And the king promised to make him his successor to the kingdom after his death. The princes, however, were compelled to remain under a curse for as many nights as they had danced with the princesses. The end. The moral of today's story is, don't lie. Dancing should not be that big of a deal. And have some compassion for the men that you are having put to death because of your secrets. I do feel bad for the princes who have to remain under their curse, and the princesses who just wanted them free so that they could fall in love. But once the princes are out from their curse, there is the odd man out since the oldest princess got married. The final version that the Grimm brothers published has little to no changes from the original. There may be a word change here or two, or an extra line of dialogue, but all in all, they are almost identical. I'm rather surprised this one was left untouched by the brothers. As you know, they have a heavy hand in editing. Today's fairy tale was read from the complete first edition, the original folk and fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm, translated and edited by Jack Zipes. I want to thank you for listening to the first season of Mythical, whether today is your first episode or you've been with me since episode 1, where I read Cinderella. I hope that you'll stick around for bonus episodes and first season 2 in January. If you have any Italian fairy tales you would like me to read during season 2, you can email me at mythicalthepodcast@gmail.com, or you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at mythicalpodcast. I'm very excited for next season, as I already have some wonderful stories picked out. Thank you for joining me today. I'm the narrator, and this is Mythical.